The start of the NFL free agency period is coming soon, actually, in less than 2 weeks, which means there's going to be some big name players on the move, especially at the wide receiver position. Joining me to talk about some of the big names who could be on the move is former NFL head coach Jim Mora. Jim, probably the biggest free agent wide receiver out there is going to be Allen Robinson. Entering next season at only 28 years old, he has been a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy over each of the last 2 seasons. And there's been reports that the Chicago Bears could franchise him and then maybe trade him. Ultimately, will Robinson remain in the Windy City, or are we going to see him in another city?
Well, I first of all, he was on my fantasy team, and so and he did well for me. So I was a fan. I think that they will franchise him. I think they'd be foolish not to. Now, whether or not they decide to trade him and turn that into draft picks that give him some youth and fill some needs at other positions, that remains to be seen. If I'm Allen Robinson, though, I probably would like to get out of Chicago. We've seen him excel in an offense the last couple of years that's really playing with a quarterback that has not reached greatness yet, has shown inconsistencies, is not that accurate. And yet Allen Robinson's continues to put up big numbers. But if you put him in an offense where they're slinging the ball over the yard and they're playing a system that fits him, and he's got a quarterback that can throw with accuracy and that he trusts, I mean, this guy's going to go straight through the ceiling. So a lot of intrigue here with this one, I think, whether he's franchised, whether he's not, whether he's on the market, whether he's not, if he's franchised and then traded. Regardless of all those things, hey, Alan, thanks for a good year last year. Jim Mora appreciates it.
From a fantasy perspective, staying in Chicago wouldn't be the worst thing because, well, he's kind of quarterback proof, right? I mean, he succeeded with Blake Bortles in Jacksonville and then with Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles in Chicago. And assuming the Bears bring Trubisky back, right now he is scheduled to be a free agent. That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for Robinson. I'd like to see him go back to Jacksonville and be the number one wide receiver for the eventual quarterback there, Trevor Lawrence, who is expected to be the number one overall pick. But regardless, I feel like Robinson is going to end up being a top 10, top 12 receiver in most 2021 fantasy drafts. Can the same thing be said about Chris Godwin, though? Now, he's younger than Robinson. He'll be 25 entering next season. He's coming off a disappointing campaign. He was the wide receiver 31, missed 4 games due to injuries. Do you think ultimately the Buccaneers will tag Godwin because he's so young and he's clearly one of the top options there for the GOAT, Tom Brady?
Well, Chris was also on my fantasy team. And, I struggled all year with him because there was some inconsistencies with him. He didn't have a great year. He had the concussion issues, the injuries, and I was never quite sure if I should put him in the lineup or not. But I think he's a tremendous young talent, as you said. He can play inside, he can play outside. And if he stays healthy and if he stays focused, I think he can put up tremendous numbers. He's indicated that he's not necessarily chasing the dollar. And him making that statement leads me to believe that, Tampa may not franchise him. They may get a deal done with him fairly quickly. If I'm playing with Tom Brady and I'm playing for Bruce Arians and I'm a receiver, I think I'm a pretty happy guy. Now, Chris has to look at his long term. Tom's not going to be there forever. I don't know how long Bruce is going to be there. If he signs a long-term deal, does he get caught in a situation where he doesn't have a quarterback? So I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. And I said, I think that he can be very productive because he plays inside and out, and he's a tough matchup.
At Godwin, the only thing about Tampa Bay in that situation is that there's a lot of mouths to feed, right? You got Mike Evans. I would expect Antonio Brown would be back. I'd expect Rob Gronkowski would be back. O.J. Howard will be back off of the injury. So for Godwin to really meet that next level, hit that next level, and reach real fantasy stardom, maybe it needs to be someplace else, like, say, the Philadelphia Eagles, who desperately need wide receivers. I'd like to see Godwin in a spot where he can be someone's number one. And in Tampa Bay, there's potentially 3 number ones there if you think Antonio Brown is still on that level. But of course, Godwin, regardless of where he ends up, will likely be in that wide receiver 2 conversation. But just 2 of many free agent wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster, of course, is also going to hit the free agent market. There are a lot of big name wideouts who could be changing teams. And you can follow along with all of the movement both in terms of real football and fantasy football by following along at si.com/fantasy.